When you are born into poverty and your family has been exposed to poverty for generations, it is difficult to break the cycle of poverty. That's exactly what Alice and Finn were doing, but nothing seemed to be working. We decided to stop renovating the house on a budget and do it ourselves. If I had known what I would find there, I would have stripped the floor a long time ago. The amount of cash that Alice and Finn discovered shocked them. Alice watched in disbelief as Finn tapped the floorboards. The men were trying to figure out what was going on when Finn hit the floorboards with a hammer to seal the deal. Then they came to their senses. I had money. Shocked, Alice and Finn danced in the space. They talked about everything they would buy that night: food, furniture, and of course home improvements. But the next day, when they went to the grocery store, something unexpected happened. When I got to the store, things started to get weird. Police got involved soon after. I was surprised by what he said about money. But what was all that cash doing under the floorboards? Why were the police dispatched? Poverty is one of the most prevalent problems in the world, and Alice and Finn were fighting against it. We both always dreamed of the day when we wouldn't have to stress about not having enough money for dinner. I finally gave up. They made the most of their resources and began to feel joy in their hearts. With Finn's salary as a garbage collector, he manages to make ends meet while living in the modest, dilapidated house that Alice's family has lived in for many years. Although they were happy with their lives, the house they lived in began to deteriorate over time as termites invaded the foundation. The house needed to be renovated. Neither of us had ever remodeled or built a new house, but with winter approaching, this was our only option. Therefore, they spent the first few weeks accumulating supplies. Since the operation had a very limited budget, they had to scour the city for supplies. When we first started the renovation procedure, we were collecting different types of wood planks, insulation, and bricks. That would be enough to temporarily motivate them. An outsider would have advised them to stop and save up so the experts could complete the job, but in reality, they had no outsider interaction. Only 2 people were trying to survive. First, we started by removing the flooring. I soon realized that demolishing was much easier than building. In the living room, we removed half of the flooring and installed insulation in that area. They then resealed the floor using the wooden planks they found. The next day, I decided to remove some more of the flooring and seal it. And they were lucky because when Finn made a hole in the wooden floor, something that no one expected came out. Was this a way to escape poverty? Before we continue, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and click the notification bell for more amazing stories. When Finn's hammer hit the ground, dollar bills flew off the ground. They stood motionless, watching the dollar bills fall to the ground as Alice yelled for them to stop. When they finally realized what had happened, they gasped in shock. After exchanging glances and shaking hands, they began dancing in the living room. They had never felt happier in their lives than they did at that moment. However, the joy did not last long. Moments later, Alice knelt down and grabbed the rest of her cash, which she had hidden in the basement of her house. There were piles of $50 bills and even $100 bills. Noticing her torn expression, Finn knelt down next to her. "Love, this is what you've been waiting for. And now to find it from under the family floorboards. It's definitely directed at us." Alice was shining brighter than I'd ever seen her, and it was contagious. The rest of the evening was full of magic. We talked about our ideal lifestyle and how we should spend our money, but we never really felt a connection. When I woke up the next morning, everything seemed like a dream. But as I walked into the living room, still holding the cash, I was suddenly brought back to reality. I felt even more awake than the night before. This may be suspicious cash. The money was discovered, hidden under the floorboards of a home the family had owned for many years. Alice is confident that there are no criminals in her family tree. I should have gone to the grocery store first, which was only fair. They did not bring the entire amount because they did not want to show off their new wealth in front of everyone. I barely got about $500. I thought that was enough. When I arrived at the grocery store, I stocked up on everything I needed. Other foods that have a long shelf life, such as bread, spaghetti, and canned vegetables. So he only brought $500 into the store, which seemed small compared to the other piles of cash, but it stood out. Alice had the impression that the staff were watching them. She didn't understand why they were doing that now, but she probably did it out of fear of having something taken away from her. The two had known each other for a long time and had never stolen any bread. But as I pushed my cart to the register, something happened. Maybe he imagined him rushing out the door with a cart full of food. There were many items that the cashier had no choice but to scan. I realized how absurd it seemed that two people, so filthy and so poor, should spend 2 or 3 months' worth of food. How much is it? The manager approached them and asked them to follow him to the back. The manager led them to a small space in the back and seated them at a table. He seemed quite serious, and the two of you could feel the tension in the air. "What's going on?" Finn finally asked. "Well, there are some questions about what's going on at the moment," the manager said. "I hate to ask you this, but how are you going to pay for that food?" the manager continued. When the manager bent down to take the cash, Alice snatched it away. She said flatly, as she stood up to leave the room. A large security guard jumped out of the shadows nearby. Finn was shocked and said, "I'm sorry, but I can't let that happen." The manager said, "I called the police." Alice sat down again. Finn turned to Alice, and the thought immediately dawned on him. Why did these people treat them as if they had already committed theft? But she did not have as much courage as she did. I thought this was partly why they had such a great relationship. But perhaps in this case, we should have been a little more forceful. "Well, why did you have to call the police?" she said, after clearing her throat. The manager replied, "Not yet." They both knew how badly disadvantaged people were treated. It was a scary thought, but sometimes preconceptions lead to action. No one knew whether authorities would consider them. They both understood how unlikely the explanation was for how they found the money. I heard sirens approaching and waited anxiously for the police to arrive. The manager abruptly left the front of the store to wait for the police and returned with 2 police officers by his side. "My name is Officer Smith, and this is my partner, Officer Hendricks. This can be done in 2 ways. Otherwise, you two will have to follow me outside and get into the police car willingly, or I will handcuff you both and have to do it the hard way." When Alice turned towards him, Finn noticed her fear. He carefully moved his chair back so that he stood up. Alice and Finn, inexperienced with police, kept silent en route to the station, wary of incrimination. They were abruptly separated upon arrival, heightening Alice's anxiety, reliant on Finn's calming presence during interrogation. Officer Smith suddenly yells at Alice to give her back the money in her pocket. He held out his hand to her. Alice stopped. "Can I have it back?" Alice asked. But the officer laughed. Alice sighs. "We'll see about that she must comply with the officer's request." Understood. The policeman left Alice's room without saying a word, leaving her alone. Thanks for tuning in to Spread Channel. Until next time, keep your imagination soaring.